Welcome to the Philosophical Odysseys podcast. Think about the last time your GPS died in a place you didn't know.
Oh, the worst feeling.
Right. The screen freezes, the little blue line vanishes, and you get that sudden, sharp spike of panic right in your chest.
Yeah, absolute panic.
And that panic, that is exactly the feeling of modern society losing its leash on you. I mean, you aren't just off the grid geographically, you're suddenly forced to navigate by intuition, which is, modern society is completely atrophied.
It really is a terrifying moment for most people, mainly because we are deeply conditioned to believe that movement has to be optimized.
Yeah, like we have to be productive.
Exactly. If we aren't moving toward a visible, categorized, and, relentlessly efficient destination, we just feel like we're failing.
But what happens when you lean into that failure? What happens when you just, walk without a destination? Today, we are going on a deep dive into two incredibly contrasting sources that explore this exact phenomenon.
And they are fantastic sources, really.
They really are. Our mission for this deep dive is to look at a fascinating collection of excerpts from a renowned French philosopher's book. And that book traces the history of walking through the lens of some of history's most radical thinkers.
Right, and acting as a sort of brilliant counterweight to that, we're bringing in an iconic, deeply passionate essay on walking.
The transcendentalist one, right?
Yeah, by a legendary 19th century American transcendentalist. And his essay acts as this vigorous defense of the wild and of absolute freedom.
So together, these materials form a kind of manifesto.
They do. They strip away everything we think we know about getting from point A to point B, and they force us to look at the mechanics of our own physical bodies moving through space.
And that is exactly our mission here. We're taking this stack of sources to unpack a profoundly simple question. Like, why do we walk?
It seems so basic, but it's not.
Not at all. Because I'm talking to you, the listener, right now. You probably walked today. Maybe it was just, out to your car in the driveway.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe a sleepy shuffle to the kitchen for your first cup of coffee.
The most important walk of the day.
Seriously.
Yeah.
But what if that simple act of putting one foot in front of the other is actually the ultimate shortcut to freedom, rebellion, a deep philosophical insight? Okay, let's unpack this.
To really get to the bottom of this, we have to start by tearing down a modern idol, so to speak.
Let's tear it down.
Our French source does this immediately by throwing a massive roadblock in front of how 21st century society views physical movement. The author explicitly, almost aggressively, states a foundational rule walking is not a sport.
Which sounds completely counterintuitive at first.
Right.
I mean, you lace up your sneakers, you sweat, your heart rate goes up. Of course it's a sport, right?
You'd think so.
But the distinction the author makes here completely shifted how I view my weekend hikes, actually. Because he breaks down the underlying psychology of sports. And sports are entirely constructed around rules, scoring, technique, discipline, and essentially a winner and a loser.
He even compares the psychology of sports to the psychology of war.
Oh, right, the war analogy.
It's a brilliant comparison, really, because in war, there's honor in victory and shame in defeat. And sports artificially recreate that exact binary.
Yeah.
The respect you have for a sporting opponent perfectly mirrors the adversarial hatred you have for an enemy. Sports are inherently combative, even if you're just, competing against your own previous best time.
You're always fighting something.
Exactly. You're tracking, measuring, ranking, always.
Contrast that with walking. The French philosopher argues that walking is the exact opposite of that combative framework. Walking is like child's play.
Literally.
It requires absolutely no technique. You literally just let gravity pull you forward and you catch yourself with your foot.
That's all it is, a controlled fall.
A controlled fall, yeah. And the source argues that the only thing you're supposed to be admiring while walking is the brightness of the sky and the landscape around you, not your stopwatch.
And that lack of technique is precisely what makes it subversive, because in a sport, you're obsessed with the internal machinery of your body.
Like tracking your heart rate and all that.
Yeah. Right. A marathon runner is constantly checking their smartwatch, obsessing over their pulse, calculating their split times. Their focus is entirely introverted and quantitative.
They're managing a machine.
Exactly. But a true walker's focus is extroverted and qualitative. You aren't optimizing the machine. You're dissolving the machine into the environment.
Dissolving the machine. I love that. I'm just picturing a toddler taking their first steps.
Oh, that's a great image.
Like that toddler isn't agonizing over milliseconds or trying to break a personal record. They're just experiencing this sheer, unadulterated joy of momentum.
Just pure movement.
But modern society kind of hates that unstructured joy, don't you think? Because it can't be monetized.
He absolutely hates it.
The source takes this massive, well-deserved shot at the modern trekking industry.
Oh, the trekking gear.
Yes. Think about it. We've taken the simplest human act and layered it with, like, carbon fiber poles, moisture-wicking aerodynamic gear, GPS trackers.
We overcomplicate it.
It's society's desperate attempt to drag the boardroom and the spreadsheet straight into the forest.
And by turning walking into trekking, we domesticate it. We put metrics on the wild. And our American source actually deepens this critique by looking at the very language we use to describe walking.
The etymology part.
Yeah, he dives into the etymology of the word saunterer, someone who saunters or strolls.
Right.
He presents two historical theories that perfectly capture the psychology of true walking. The first traces back to the Middle Ages, referring to people who roamed the countryside asking for charity under the guise of going to the Sainte Terre, the Holy Land.
Sainte Terre, meaning Holy Land.
Exactly. So children would see them wandering through the village and say, there goes a Sainte Terre.
Okay, so the first theory makes them sound like holy beggars, almost.
Basically, yeah.
But that still implies a geographical destination, right? Like Jerusalem. And if true walking is about aimlessness, there has to be a deeper linguistic root than just, walking to a specific city.
And that leads us to his second theory, which I think is far more profound. He suggests saunterer comes from the French phrase sans terre, meaning without land.
Without land.
Having no home, no property, no fixed estate, yet paradoxically being equally at home everywhere.
Sans terre. You don't own the land, so you kind of belong to all of it.
That's the idea.
But the American author takes this beautiful, poetic idea and makes it almost terrifyingly demanding.
He really does.
He argues that to truly be a saunterer, to truly walk, requires a massive level of psychological detachment. Like, he writes that you should only go for a walk if you're ready to leave your family, pay your debts, make your will, and never return.
Which sounds incredibly extreme.
It sounds unhinged.
It does, perhaps even callous to modern ears. But we have to understand the mechanism he's describing here. He isn't advocating for literal abandonment. He's demanding total psychological presence. If you're walking through the woods, but your mind is agonizing over a mortgage payment or, an argument you had with your spouse or your upcoming performance review, you aren't actually in the woods.
You're still at the office.
Exactly. You're just projecting your societal anxieties onto the trees.
Your body is sans terre, but your mind is still chained to the property line.
Precisely. The concept of the saunterer turns a simple afternoon stroll into a holy crusade. But it's a quest not for geographical territory in the Middle East. It's a quest to reclaim the Holy Land within oneself.
Reclaiming the Holy Land inside you.
Yes. It requires killing off the version of you that is beholden to society, at least for the duration of the walk.
So here's where it gets really interesting for me. If the modern world is obsessed with cracking steps on our smartwatches and closing our activity rings, are we completely destroying the essence of walking by commodifying it?
I would argue yes.
I mean, is it even possible to saunter anymore? Every time my wrist vibrates to tell me my pace is too slow, I am explicitly tethering myself to the very machine I'm supposedly trying to escape.
You are. You're dragging the metrics of your own exploitation into the sanctuary, which naturally forces us to examine the actual cost of our movements.
The economics of a walk.
Right. If true walking requires leaving those societal rules behind, what exactly are we buying with this time spent walking?
Well, everything has a cost, right? And the American transcendentalist has this brilliant, totally inverted view of economics.
It's fascinating.
He calculates cost, not in dollars and cents, but in the currency of human existence.
Right.
He writes, the cost of a thing is the amount of what I will call life, which is required to be exchanged for it.
It is one of the most radical economic theories ever proposed because it's completely subjective and entirely biological.
It stopped me dead in my tracks when I read it. How much life are you exchanging? He argues that walking all day, which seemingly produces nothing and earns you no money, actually yields this massive profit for the soul.
A huge profit.
Yeah, you're out there, away from the gossip of society, away from the transactional nature of the town, and you are banking pure, unadulterated life. You're accumulating time rather than spending it.
And to really understand the power of that, we have to look at how the French source tackles the modern illusion of freedom.
Oh, the micro-freedoms.
Yes, today we are surrounded by what the author calls micro-freedoms. We have rapid transit, high-speed trains, instant communication, next-day delivery.
All the things that are supposed to save us time.
Exactly. We genuinely believe these technologies free us. But the philosopher argues the exact opposite. He explains how they actually bind us faster and tighter to the capitalist system.
Let's break down the mechanics of that because it's so counterintuitive. Give me an example of how a high-speed train actually traps you.
Okay, think about the modern professional. You work 40 hours a week in a highly stressful, sedentary job. You do this to afford the expensive high-speed train ticket that will whisk you away to the mountains for a 2-day weekend.
Right, a quick getaway.
Because the train is fast, you can squeeze this trip into a tiny window of time. But look at the exchange rate. You've spent 5 days of your vital life force absorbing immense stress just to buy a 48-hour micro-freedom.
Just a tiny slice of freedom.
Only to rush back on Sunday night to do it again. The speed of the train is what allows the corporation to demand you be back at your desk by Monday morning.
That is devastating when you put it like that. Working all week just to buy a train ticket costs more life than simply spending weeks walking to the destination.
Because while you are walking, you own your time.
Exactly. The high-speed train doesn't suspend time, it compresses it. True freedom, the source says, is the total suspension of time. It's the freedom of renunciation.
And to really illustrate what this freedom of renunciation looks like, the French text brings in a profound concept from Hindu philosophy.
The 4 stages of life.
Yes, this isn't just religious trivia, it's a psychological roadmap. The first stage is the student, where your identity is bound by learning and obeying authority.
Makes sense.
The second is the householder. This is where most of modern society is permanently stuck. You amass wealth, you raise a family, you build a career, and you wear the heavy social masks required to function in society.
You become the manager, the parent, the taxpayer, the good citizen. All those labels.
Exactly. Then comes the third stage, the forest dweller, where you begin to retreat from those material duties. And finally, the ultimate liberation, the fourth stage, the sannyasin, or the wandering ascetic.
The sannyasin, the ultimate walker.
The sannyasin walks endlessly, completely free from the past and the future. They own absolutely nothing.
Nothing at all.
But because they own nothing, they possess the absolute intensity of the present moment. They have renounced all societal ties.
Because by walking like that, you lose your identity. And I want to pause here because this is huge.
It is.
Think about how much of your identity right now, listener, is tied up in your LinkedIn profile, your Instagram grid, your job title, or even the car you drive. We spend decades carefully curating this avatar of who we are.
We do. We're obsessed with our brands.
Right. And stripping that away sounds romantic when we discuss it on a deep dive, but practically it would feel like a psychological death.
Huh?
That is the terror the French source is talking about. When you walk far enough, you lose your history. You lose your name.
You cease to be a biographical subject and you revert to being a biological entity. The French source beautifully describes this state as becoming an ancient animal moving among the trees.
Yes. Imagine how liberating it is once you push past that initial terror to just be lungs, legs, and a heartbeat moving through space.
Just biology.
You aren't a credit scorer. You aren't a middle manager who missed Q3 projections. You're just a mammal sensing the shift in the wind.
In the modern labor market, we are entirely defined by 2 functions, what we produce and what we consume.
Always producing or consuming.
Walking, in the economic sense of these authors, is a radical refusal to do either. It is the ultimate act of anti-consumption and anti-production. When you're walking, you are economically useless to the state. And in that uselessness lies the ultimate relief. The freedom of being a nobody means you finally have nothing left to defend.
So what does this all mean for us today? The sources say walking strips away our identity. For modern people obsessed with personal branding and being somebody, is this loss of identity terrifying, or is it the ultimate relief?
I think it's both. It's terrifying until you surrender to it, and then it's a relief.
But once you've shed that identity, once you are this anonymous animal standing at a crossroads, which direction do you actually go? Does geography matter when you're a nobody?
The American author believed it mattered deeply.
He had a very specific compass for this, didn't he?
He did, and it's a fascinating quirk of his transcendentalist worldview. He admits that when he steps out of his front door to walk, his instinct almost always pulls him west or southwest.
And he actively, intentionally avoids the east.
Always avoids the east.
Why? Because to him, East represents history. Think about it from a 19th century American perspective. The East is Europe. It's old books, stale traditions, rigid class structures, and past failures. The East is the heavy, suffocating weight of everything that has already been done. But the West represents the future, the unexhausted, and the absolute wild.
He even plays with a famous old Latin phrase to make this point.
Ex oriente lux.
Exactly, which means light from the east, historically referring to the dawn of the sun and the birth of civilization in Mesopotamia and Europe. He takes that ancient proverb and cheekily adds, ex occidente frux, fruit from the west.
Meaning, okay, the dawn might have happened in the East, but the actual harvest, the true potential of humanity, is found by walking west into the unknown.
Precisely.
This leads to what might be one of the most famous lines in his entire text. In wildness is the preservation of the world. Notice he doesn't say wilderness like a designated national park. He says wildness.
Wildness as a state of being.
It's an active feral energy. He's arguing that all great civilizations actually draw their enduring strength from the wild, not from their manicured gardens or their libraries.
He uses the founding myth of Rome to anchor this idea.
Oh, Romulus and Remus.
Yes. The founders of the Roman Empire weren't raised by aristocrats in a palace. They were nursed by a wild she-wolf in the wilderness. His argument is that Rome didn't get its world-conquering vitality from a classroom. It got its power from the untamed wild.
The wolf energy.
Right. Civilizations that lose touch with that feral, wolf-like energy inevitably collapse into decadence.
It's such a uniquely American transcendentalist view. It's this total, unapologetic rejection of European historical baggage in favor of absolute, limitless potential.
It really is.
But I want to clarify something here because it's crucial. The wild isn't just a physical place on a map where the trees get thick. It's an untamed state of mind.
A mental landscape.
Society is a domestication machine. It is constantly trying to tame our thoughts, round off our rough edges, and make us predictable. The West, the wild, is where the mind can roam entirely free from dogma.
And we can see exactly how society tries to domesticate us by looking at how the author frames the concept of the daily news. He essentially argues that walking must replace the morning news.
This part hit me so hard. Think about the modern ritual of reading the news, or worse, doom scrolling on your phone in bed.
We all do it.
We do, but the news is just repetitive, ephemeral noise. It's a localized, manufactured anxiety. It traps you in the immediate, trivial present.
Exactly. The news makes you feel like every tiny political squabble or stock market dip is the end of the world. It completely distorts your sense of scale.
It makes everything feel like an emergency.
But a morning walk connects you to the eternal present. The text beautifully notes that when you are out there in the wild, the sun is just a morning star, human history becomes totally irrelevant.
Imagine sitting at your kitchen table, scrolling through a feed of geopolitical disasters, your shoulders tensed up, your breathing shallow, your brain is reacting to abstract threats you cannot control.
A terrible way to start the day.
Now imagine walking at dawn as the ice is just starting to melt on a pond. The temporal distortion is massive. You shift from the frantic 24-hour news cycle to geological time.
Geological time, that's a great way to put it.
The landscape doesn't care who won the election. It is a completely different reality. It's a daily rebirth where, as the text implies, your societal sins and anxieties are just absorbed and forgiven by the landscape.
But this raises a very practical challenge for the modern listener.
Yeah, I was thinking about this.
If East is history and West is the wild, where do we walk today? In the 19th century, the transcendentalist was literally walking toward a vast, uncharted American frontier. Today, the geographical frontier is closed. Every inch of the map has been photographed by satellites.
Right. So if East is history and West is the wild, where do we walk today when every inch of the map has been charted? Does the wild have to be a geographical forest, or can you find the wild walking down a city street? Or is this philosophy dead because the frontier is dead?
I'd say the philosophy is very much alive if we remember that the wild is a state of mind, a refusal to be domesticated.
So you can find it anywhere.
You can find the wild in a city, but it requires a radical shift in attention.
Yeah.
You find it by walking without a destination, deliberately subverting the city's prescribed paths of consumption.
Refusing to go to the coffee shop or the mall.
Right. You find it by observing the cracks in the pavement where weeds push through the concrete, realizing that nature is slowly, inevitably reclaiming the city. You find the wild by becoming an anonymous, untrackable observer rather than a predictable consumer.
So we can use the environment, even a built one, to break our minds out of their domesticated cages.
Exactly.
Which is a perfect segue to looking at how walking literally, physically shaped the thoughts of some of history's most consequential minds. Let's look at the actual walking habits of two absolute titans of philosophy, Friedrich Nietzsche and Immanuel Kant.
If you want to understand how the mechanics of walking influence the architecture of thought, you could not find two more diametrically opposed case studies. Let's start with Nietzsche.
Let's set the stage for Nietzsche, because it wasn't just that he liked a good hike. His body was a prison of pain.
A literal prison.
He suffered from intense, blinding migraines. He was practically half blind, constantly vomiting from the sheer intensity of the pain. His physical deterioration was so severe that it actually forced him to resign from his highly prestigious university post at a very young age.
His body was essentially breaking down. But to escape this excruciating agony, he didn't sedate himself or lie in bed. He weaponized his suffering through movement.
He weaponized it.
He walked up to 8 hours a day in the jagged mountains of the Engadin in Switzerland and along the shores of Nice in France.
8 hours a day. For Nietzsche, walking was working. It wasn't a break from thinking. It was the biological engine of his thought.
The engine, yes.
He had this deep, visceral hatred for traditional academics. He despised books written by people sitting hunched over desks in libraries. He famously said those books smell like library dust and heavy, stagnant air.
You can practically smell the claustrophobia in his critique.
You really can. He believed that if a thought was conceived while sitting down, it was a sick thought.
We do not belong to those who have ideas only among books, he wrote. His philosophy was born in kinetic motion. He talked about thinking while dancing, while climbing, and the topography mattered immensely.
Physical landscape.
Yes. Walking upward, forcing his burning lungs to process thin mountain air, physically elevated his thoughts.
Picture Nietzsche. This intense, solitary figure with the massive mustache, scribbling furiously in 6 little notebooks while hiking a treacherous, freezing mountain pass.
It's a wild image.
The exertion, the danger, the defiance of gravity, it all fueled his radical sledgehammer philosophy. The French source points out that his most famous concept, the eternal return.
Ah, the eternal return.
Yeah, the terrifying and beautiful idea that time repeats itself infinitely and you must live your life over and over again exactly the same way. That idea was directly inspired by walking the exact same mountain paths around Lake Silvaplana.
Right.
He experienced this profound, vibrating resonance with the unchanging cyclical landscape.
The jagged landscape became a mirror for his mind. Nietzsche's walk is about physical exertion, about defying pain, about drawing radical, chaotic inspiration from the raw, wild elements.
He needed the struggle.
He needed the struggle of the climb to birth thoughts that were strong enough to shatter the swamp of regular, domesticated human morality.
Okay, now let's pivot to Immanuel Kant. We go from the wild, vomiting mountain climber to a man whose life was so devoid of adventure it's almost comical.
It really is.
Kant lived his entire life in Königsberg, Prussia. He ate exactly 1 meal a day. When he hosted friends, he provided exactly 3 plates of food, and he went for a 1-hour stroll every single afternoon at the exact same time.
The stories about Kant's routine are legendary. It is a historical fact that his neighbors would literally set their clocks by his daily walk.
Set their clocks by him.
He was a human metronome.
And he always walked alone. Why? Not because he was antisocial, but because he didn't want to talk to anyone, which allowed him to keep his mouth shut and breathe purely and strictly through his nose.
That's my favorite detail.
He believed with absolute certainty that this would prevent him from catching a cold from the damp Prussian air. His path was so rigid, so unvarying, day after day, year after year, that the townspeople officially named it the Philosopher's Walk.
So we have 2 distinct modes of intellectual walking here. Nietzsche's method is wild exertion, but Kant's walk is what we might call extreme, weaponized monotony.
Weaponized monotony. Okay, but push back here. We have 2 totally opposite methods here. Nietzsche's wild physical exertion and Kant's rigid monotony. Which one is actually more freeing for the human mind? Can strict routine paradoxically create more mental freedom than wild wandering?
I mean, how does walking the exact same path every day, breathing through your nose like a robot, produce some of the most complex, paradigm-shifting philosophy in human history? Shouldn't that level of routine completely deaden the mind?
That's what you'd think.
But that is the paradox. Monotony cures boredom in a very specific neurological way. It completely removes decision fatigue.
Ah, decision fatigue.
Think about Kant's brain. By walking the exact same path at the exact same time, breathing in the exact same way, Kant put his physical body on an automatic, closed loop. His sensory input was totally predictable.
You didn't have to process anything new.
Right. Because the physical realm required absolutely zero conscious management, his mind was completely free to detach from the physical world. It acted like a sensory deprivation tank.
Wow.
Inside that void of predictability, he could construct these massive, complex, mathematically precise philosophical systems, like the Critique of Pure Reason.
That makes so much sense. If you are constantly navigating a new path, looking out for bears or checking your map, your brain is tied to survival. Kant eliminated survival from the equation.
Exactly.
So we have two totally opposite methods here. Nietzsche sought freedom through the physical world, using the unpredictable wild to strike the spark. Kant sought freedom from the physical world, using routine to build castles in the sky.
Both use the rhythm of walking to achieve a flow state, but the triggers for that state were absolute opposites.
But Kant's method of weaponized monotony relies on a perfectly healthy, incredibly disciplined mind. What happens when the mind is fracturing? Does the rhythm of walking heal it, or does it just accelerate the breakdown?
That's the danger side of this.
Because not everyone who walks into the woods comes back with a philosophical masterpiece. Some use walking as a desperate attempt to outrun their own demons.
And the French source doesn't shy away from this. It explores the deeply dark side of walking, focusing on the poets Arthur Rimbaud and Gerard de Nerval. Walking is not always a peaceful communion with nature. It can be a pathology.
Let's look at Arthur Rimbaud, famously dubbed the man with wind soles.
Rimbaud is the archetype of the rebellious walker. But he didn't walk for health or inspiration. He walked out of sheer, unadulterated anger.
He was furious.
For him, walking was an act of violent rejection. He wanted to escape what he called the disgusting present of bourgeois European society.
He walked to Paris, he walked to Brussels with literal holes in his pockets. And later in his life, he left Europe entirely and walked across the searing, unforgiving deserts of Aden and Harar in Africa.
Which is brutal terrain.
We have to unpack the physical reality of this. He wasn't hiking with a hydration pack. He was marching through blistering heat, pushing his body to the absolute brink.
Because for Rimbaud, walking was a one-way street. It wasn't a round trip where you return home refreshed. You walk until the physical exhaustion finally drowns out the complaining of your own mind.
A way to mute the brain.
It is a brutal coping mechanism. If the mind is screaming, you make the legs scream louder until the mind goes numb.
He literally walked until his body gave out. He developed a horrific tumor on his knee from the relentless strain, had his leg amputated, and died at just 37 years old.
Tragic.
His entire life was a frantic physical flight forward. He tried to outwalk his own shadow, and it killed him.
Now we have Gerard de Nerval, who embodies a very different kind of dark walking. The source describes it as melancholic wandering.
Which sounds almost romantic at first.
It does. His early walks were exactly that, dreamy, poetic strolls through the autumn fogs on the outskirts of Paris. These walks brought back sweet, diluted, sepia-toned childhood memories.
Nostalgic.
Walking was a way to water down his sorrow, to make his depression manageable. The rhythm was a gentle anesthetic.
But then the dosage stopped working.
Right.
The sorrow was too deep. His walking mutated. It became frantic, dark, and utterly compulsive. He walked endlessly night and day, from cafes to libraries to cheap hotels.
You couldn't stop.
He wasn't wandering for pleasure anymore. He was a prisoner of his own momentum. He was chasing a fixed idea, essentially his own spiraling madness. The source says he was following a star that only he could see.
And tragically, his final walk ended in suicide. He hung himself in a dark, freezing Parisian alleyway.
God.
These two poets show us the inherent danger of walking. Walking acts as a powerful amplifier of intent.
I want to really highlight that. Walking amplifies intent. This is intense. It makes you wonder, can walking actually be dangerous? At what point does walking stop being a way to find yourself and become a desperate mechanism to run away from yourself?
If you walk to connect with the world, the rhythm opens you up to connection. But if you walk to sever your ties to the world, to punish yourself, or to escape, the rhythm will march you straight into the abyss.
It's a hypnotic march.
Exactly. The repetitive drumbeat of footsteps can lull you into peace, but it can just as easily become a march into total isolation.
But there is a cure for this alienation, right?
Yeah.
And it involves walking to strip away the toxic layers of society to find the pure human underneath.
Yes. If Rimbaud and Nerval represent the destruction of the self through walking, Jean-Jacques Rousseau and the ancient cynics represent the resurrection of the self through walking.
Resurrection of the self.
They used walking to strip away the toxic layers of society, not to destroy themselves, but to find the pure human underneath.
Rousseau is such a fascinating figure in this context. Like Nietzsche, he absolutely despised sitting at a desk.
Hated it.
He felt that the social world was fundamentally corrupt. He believed society was essentially an engine designed to generate envy, violence, and vanity. We're born free, but everywhere we are in chains, as he famously wrote.
So to escape those chains, he walked into the woods. But he wasn't looking for a workout, and he wasn't running away from his shadow like Rimbaud. He was trying to find the first man, or the natural man within himself. He wanted to strip away the corrupting varnish of civilization to find the innocent, content human that existed before property and status messed everything up.
And what's beautiful is how the nature of his walks evolved as he aged. In his final, incredibly moving work, Reveries of the Solitary Walker, we see an older, battered Rousseau.
He was going through a lot.
He had been rejected by society, chased out of cities, his books burned, and he is stripped of all his worldly ambitions. He no longer walks to formulate grand, world-changing political theories.
No, the ambition is gone. He just walks to match the rhythm of the setting sun.
He expected absolutely nothing from the world at that point. And here is the profound mechanism. Because he expected nothing, because his ego was entirely dissolved by his solitary walking, every single leaf, every breeze felt like a profound, unearned gift.
The ultimate state of grace.
He achieved this ultimate state of grace simply by putting one foot in front of the other in complete solitude.
Which brings us to a much more extreme performative version of this stripping down the cynics of ancient Greece, particularly Diogenes.
Diogenes, the guy who lived in a barrel and told Alexander the Great to step out of his sunlight.
Exactly. But the cynics weren't just eccentrics. They used walking and voluntary homelessness as a rigorous lifestyle choice to prove a deep philosophical point.
They made a point with their bodies.
They faced freezing winds and raw elements entirely by choice to expose the absurdity and superficiality of social norms.
The source mentions a famous story of Diogenes eating a raw octopus in public. Let's explain why he did that, because it wasn't just to gross people out.
Far from it.
In ancient Greece, fire and cooking were the ultimate symbols of civilization, the Promethean gift that separated humans from beasts. By eating the octopus raw, Diogenes was making a radical, neurological rewiring of societal shame.
A total rejection.
He was physically demonstrating, I do not need your fire, I do not need your civilization, I reject your foundational myths.
They made a razor-sharp distinction between what is useful and what is strictly necessary.
Useful versus necessary.
A soft bed is useful, a gold cup is useful, but only the ground is strictly necessary for sleep. Only water from a stream is necessary to quench thirst.
So
there's that famous anecdote where Diogenes sees a child drinking water out of his cupped hands, and Diogenes immediately throws away his own wooden bowl, realizing he was carrying excess, unnecessary baggage.
That's amazing. The walking cynic possesses absolutely nothing. Yet in their minds, they're the undisputed kings of the world. Are the cynics just performing a kind of extreme poverty for attention? Or is there a genuine, undeniable truth you can only access when you are shivering in a cold rainstorm with absolutely no shelter?
I think there's a genuine truth there. Because when you strip away the insulation of wealth, shelter, and property, you encounter reality in its most unfiltered form. You realize how shockingly little you actually need to survive.
And ironically, that realization completely destroys the fear of losing your possessions. You can't be threatened if you don't need anything.
And both Rousseau and the Cynics highlight the incredible importance of solitude and silence in this process. The sources note a beautiful paradox. You are never truly alone when you are walking.
You converse with nature. And even more importantly, your soul begins to converse with your body.
Oh, absolutely.
Have you ever been on a long, exhausting hike and you actually start talking to your own legs? Come on, legs, keep going, just to the top of the hill.
All the time.
It sounds crazy, but walking creates a rhythm that eventually fatigues the conscious mind. It silences the endless, judgmental, neurotic chatter of the brain. The body takes over, and the mind finally gets to rest.
By exposing themselves to the raw elements, these thinkers performed a kind of factory reset on human nature. They discovered that true wealth is lacking nothing, and true peace is expecting nothing.
But this stripping down to the bare essentials isn't just a personal spiritual practice. It isn't just about finding inner peace in the woods. When you take that radical independence and point it at a system of oppression, walking can be mobilized to change the entire world.
It becomes a weapon.
And that brings us to the final, incredibly powerful aspect of our deep dive: political pacing and the weight of gravity, focusing on Mahatma Gandhi.
When we talk about Gandhi, we are talking about walking as the ultimate unconquerable political tool. The French source details how walking was the absolute center of his activism.
He walked everywhere.
During his time in South Africa, fighting systemic discrimination, he regularly walked 34 kilometers.
Oh.
And of course, later in India, he led the famous Salt March, which covered over 390 kilometers.
Over 390 kilometers. But we have to ask the critical question: why walking? Why not ride a horse, or take a train, or drive?
Because walking requires absolutely no machines.
Exactly. It requires no fuel. It relies on no one else's infrastructure.
Yeah.
It completely embodies Gandhi's concept of Swadeshi, which means self-sufficiency and local production.
Exactly. When you walk, you are entirely independent of the colonial state's infrastructure. The British Empire maintained its iron grip on India through speed and mechanization.
The railways, the telegraphs.
They ruled through the steam engine. The empire's operational tempo was fast and industrial.
So how do you fight a machine like that when you have no weapons? You fight it by contrasting it. Gandhi's walking was the act of the poorest of the poor.
The lowest castes.
By walking, he displayed deep humility, identifying completely with the lowest castes of society who had no other mode of transport. But simultaneously, walking barefoot across a nation displayed a profound, unshakable dignity.
It was
It was a
undeniable.
direct, physical, undeniable rejection of the speed and the exploitation of the modern British world.
The empire moves by train. The resistance moves barefoot. It broke the British operational tempo because they couldn't understand it. They measured power in industrial output and velocity.
Right.
Gandhi measured power in endurance and moral weight.
And the French source brings up a fascinating point about the actual physics of walking here to explain that moral weight. Think about sports again. Basketball, pole vaulting, sprinting.
Brilliant. Sports.
Sports constantly seek to defy gravity, to conquer the air, to launch the human body off the earth. But walking embraces gravity.
It's a beautiful biomechanical observation. Every single step you take is a surrender to physics. It is a controlled fall forward into the earth.
A controlled fall.
You are constantly accepting the pull of the planet, trusting that the ground will catch you.
It's a constant rhythmic reminder of our mortality and our connection to the dirt. Gandhi embraced gravity. He accepted human physical limits. His slow, plodding pace wasn't a weakness. It was a devastating weapon.
He really was.
Picture the visual of Gandhi, this frail man in a loincloth, looking radiant and smiling after walking nearly 400 kilometers, surrounded by tens of thousands of people. He achieved more political power with his bare, gravity-bound feet than standing armies do with tanks and artillery.
Unbelievable.
By accepting that we are bound to the earth, we find an incredible, enduring strength that machines cannot break. If we connect this to the bigger picture, in our modern world that is completely obsessed with speed, efficiency, and breaking limits, is the slow, gravity-bound, repetitive nature of walking actually the ultimate act of political rebellion?
I genuinely believe it is. To walk is to refuse to participate in the acceleration of modern life.
A refusal.
It is a physical statement that says, I will not buy your fuel. I will not use your tracking apps. I will not speed up my thoughts to match your 24-hour news cycle. It is a peaceful, persistent reclamation of human agency.
Wow. What a massive paradigm shift.
It changes how you see a simple stroll.
It really does. Let's try to summarize this incredible journey. We started with a dying GPS and ended with the collapse of empires. We've seen how putting one foot in front of the other isn't just about getting from point A to point B.
It's so much more than a commute.
It's a way to reclaim our souls from the clock, to find the wild future, to structure our deepest thoughts, to outrun our demons, and to politically resist a world moving entirely too fast.
It is a profound synthesis of the human experience. And I'll leave you with a final lingering thought to mull over as you go about your week.
Okay, let's hear it.
We've talked extensively today about what walking does to our minds, our souls, and our politics. But consider the physical reality of our modern world. Look outside your window. Our built environment is becoming increasingly intentionally hostile to the walker.
Oh, completely.
We have endless suburban sprawls, multi-lane highways, pedestrian-hostile intersections, and entire cities utterly lacking sidewalks. If walking is, as these sources strongly suggest, the ultimate engine for independent thought and rebellion, what does it mean that we are building cities designed entirely for cars, where walking is physically impossible?
Are we inadvertently designing the philosopher and the rebel out of existence?
That is the fear. We might be.
That is a chilling and vital question. If we lose the physical space to walk, do we lose the mental space to think freely? Remember that broken GPS we talked about at the very beginning?
Let it stay broken.
Exactly. Maybe it's time we stop trying to fix it. Step out your door today. Leave your phone on the kitchen counter. Don't set a destination. And just listen to the rhythm of your own steps. Let the muddy waters be muddy. Don't forget to follow us and subscribe to stay updated on our latest episodes and never miss a step in this odyssey of thought. Until next time, keep questioning.